Okay, so we have our final line drawing, which is defining the shape of our character's body, in place at this point. And I've hidden out all of my previous outline attempts. So just for the fun of it, you can turn all these on, and you can get a representation of how the shape actually grew into this final drawing. And it's a good reminder to do that, because there are a lot of people, when they first try to get into drawing, and it's not necessarily just with Photoshop, even just on pencil and paper, they think that their very first sketch needs to look like this, and that this is the kind of quality they should be striving for as soon as pencil touches paper. And depending on the number of years of experience you have in drawing, maybe you can get something close to this right when you first start out. But for most of us mortals, no, that's not going to be the case. You're going to want to take a workflow similar to what I've done, where you build up layer by layer, or sheet of paper upon sheet of paper, and get that look one step at a time. Okay, now in the last video I said that we were going to go into the colorization process, and actually I misspoke, because what I want to do in this video is start outlining the areas where our character is going to have accessories, meaning some bracers around his forearms, maybe some little leather bands around his biceps. We'll give him a belt and a loincloth. I'll probably do some little fur cups around his shoes. I think we'll draw a necklace on him, and then we'll just call it right there. I mean, I've considered the concept maybe having a helmet. I haven't really decided, so I'm going to start off this drawing without him having a helmet, and if we wanted to, we could always add that later. Okay, so for starters, let's take a look at maybe organizing some of what we have here. So all of our outline and our pose structures, let's select all of these layers, and I'm going to drag these into a group. And let's call this base structure layers. So we know just by looking at it that these are here just so we can see our initial structure. And what I like to do is find, you just turn them all on, I guess. I'll grab some of the more prominent ones if I've got a lot of these layers, and I'll just turn those on. But turn them all on, close up the group, and then you can just turn them on and off. And if you ever want to see how far you've come, you can just activate or deactivate that group whenever you want to, which is kind of handy. Okay, so I will create a new layer, and I want this to actually be, I guess it could be underneath or on top of the final line. It doesn't really matter. And we'll call this accessory outline, or accessory line. It doesn't really matter. It's all going to be one and the same in the end. And let's start off just by creating the bracers at the forearms. So I'll zoom us in here to the forearm. Let's get out our pencil tool. Now I'm still painting with black, which is, that's fine in this case. And this is a leather bracer. It's fairly skin tight. It's not very loose. So what I'm going to do for starters is just draw a line across the surface of where, I think this bracer should end. Kind of like you're drawing like the line of a glove. And I should probably zoom in so I can get a nice smooth line. So let me erase that. Let's get a little bit closer. Go, and we'll just draw right across here. Now, you can leave it right there if you want to, but what will probably look a little bit better is if we bring this out a little bit and then connect it back in, forming a little bit of a lip. Now, my advice to you for the process I want to use for colorization is don't just leave it like this. In fact, it'd probably be a good idea to take our final line just temporarily, and we'll pull down its opacity, actually a lot, so it's nice and gray. And what I want to do is essentially draw out the entire shape of this bracer. So we'll come down here, and we'll also draw a little line that kind of connects at the cuff of the wrist, and then we'll extend it just a little bit on each end, and then bring it back up, and then just connect it right in. And then I'm going to trace over this existing line all the way up. Now don't leave any gaps. Make this an entirely closed surface or shape. Make sure it's completely enclosed with no gaps in the pixels. That'll come in really handy here in just a bit. Because we're going to use tools like Paint Bucket and the magic wand tool to make selections later on, and so having everything closed off will make that much easier. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I can come up here and do a band for the bicep, which I guess I'll put up a little bit higher. We'll put it up here. It doesn't really matter. And we'll let that curve down a little bit, and then again, we'll just run it out past the edge of the arm a little. The same thing over here. It shows a little bit of thickness on it, which is really all we're going for. Just connect the two of those up, and that looks pretty good. Fairly simple. It's just an armband. There's nothing really hardcore difficult about that. Let's come over to the opposite side, and we'll do the same thing. So a little cuff for the wrist, and that almost worked out. There's a little more curvature to it, and that's getting sloppy. Don't get sloppy, Zach. And keep your arm off those buttons because they make your mouse jitter. Really carefully here. Okay, and again, just run it out past a little bit, and then we'll bring it down and just follow that line. You're just tracing again. I'll zoom us in a little more closely. Zoom us in closer, not closely. And I guess we could step back. Get the bottom of this bracer in place. Okay. Intercept that line and just follow it all the way down. And closing in the shape. Okay, and that takes care of that, alright. That might be a little bit too flared out. And I might be being picky, but I'm going to bring that in just a little bit. It's got some thickness, but not quite as pronounced as it is earlier. Alright, and give him another bicep armband over here. And again, we'll just add a little bit of thickness to that. Okay, coming along nicely. Let's back out of here. I guess before we leave the upper body, we could put in the little necklace. So we'll keep this fairly simple. What I'll do is I'll just draw a line that comes down to the center of the chest, and then another line which comes down to the center of the chest, like so, and then you can really draw any shape you want if you're doing something like this. So I'll just create some sort of interesting diamond shape. We won't even really worry too much about what it is. Just something there, some sort of jewelry. Okay, so now we want to do the belt, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a buckle. So draw sort of a rounded, squarish piece, and it just kind of tucks right up under the tummy. But because of the way I want to colorize this, we're going to trace out the top of the tummy and connect this. Make sure it's a completely enclosed shape. the same thing with a belt. So let's draw down a belt that's got a little more thickness than the actual waist, like so, and then make sure that we trace out that line for the belly, so that's a full enclosed shape. And same thing over here. Just trace this all the way around, and then we'll diverge a little bit away from that flap of fat, so you really get the effect that that belly's laying over that belt. And we'll create a little bit of thickness here. Let's see how far down. Yeah, that's about right. I was wondering how far down we created that belt earlier. And I think what I'm going to do is bring this line around to about here, and we'll connect it there, and I'll just erase this excess. I'll thin that out a little bit, like the belt itself is bending a little to get around his waist. Okay, so the loincloth we're actually going to do kind of freehand. I guess I could also clean up this line right in here. That could look a little better than it does. That's already a little better. Okay, so what I'm going to do for a loincloth is just create sort of a free-flowing line that comes down, give it a couple of tatters. Again, just make sure everything stays nice and connected. And then we just want to make sure it goes up about as, or it's about as wide on one side as on the other. I want to make sure it's nice and centered. And there we go. Insta loincloth. Let's clean up some of the lines a little bit. If it gets a little ragged, that's okay. It's supposed to be a ragged piece of clothing, so just make sure that we don't have any gaps. If we run into gaps later, we're just going to have to clean them up then. So, okay, so there's a loincloth, and notice it sits right on the, it's over the drawings. Like, we shouldn't see any of all this stuff, but so we're going to have to take that out a little bit later. So we'll show you how to do that momentarily. Okay, now down here to the feet, I wanted to do some little cuffs of kind of like fur, which come out from around the tops of the shoes. So I'm just making some little jagged lines, kind of go off in different directions. And then we'll just leave nice smooth lines on top of that, or maybe a little lumpy. Either way, make sure it's nice and enclosed. Find those holes, fill them in. Okay. And I think that's all we need to do there. Let's do this over here on the other side, too. It's kind of like Grinch shoes. Okay. Throw that in. I got a little bit messy right there, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's a minor detail. Okay, I think that's going to work. And so we just need to close that off by following around the edge of the ankle. Right? And I think that's all of the pieces of clothing that I wanted to outline. Now, the only problem we have left is that in a lot of cases we can still make out some part of the line drawing underneath this, and that's going to be kind of a pain later. Nowhere is this as predominant as it is here at the crotch, where we can see right through the loincloth as if it was transparent. So what we're going to do to fix this is kind of a cool little trick. We're going to grab the magic wand tool, and let's click inside each section of our clothing with the accessory outline selected, and making sure that we are not sampling all layers. Make sure that checkbox is off. I'll hold down Shift here, and we'll click inside the armbands, holding down Shift. So we're adding to our selection because we're holding down Shift. Grab inside there and inside the loincloth section, and it looks like inside the belt section because we can still see part of the torso, so we'll grab both sides of the belt. And let's grab inside this little fur piece. That looks pretty good. I think that's everybody. The necklace we didn't really have to worry about too much, though it's already selected, which I guess doesn't really make much of a difference. I think what I'm going to do is deselect that. And to do that, I'm going to switch over to subtractive selections with my lasso, and we'll just do that. Oh, that didn't work. I'm sorry, it's additive, isn't it? That's actually what I wanted to click. So, add pink. All right, and that goes away. So what exactly are we selecting? Oh, somebody had a hole in it. That's what the problem is. So I need to systematically step back through. Who's got the hole? What was the last thing I clicked on? It looks like everybody's selected. This is why I wanted you to make sure there were no gaps, because when you use Magic Wand Tool, if there's any gaps, you're going to automatically select everything outside of that. So you want to keep everything nice and watertight. I think I might have accidentally clicked the mouse again, because right now it looks like everything I want to have selected is selected. And if you want to verify, we can switch over to Quick Mask Mode, and then that'll actually show you what you have selected, where the stuff that's not selected is going to be red and what is selected is going to be in white. And that's exactly what I wanted to have selected. So I think we're okay. So now with that, I'm going to switch up here to my final line layer, and I'll zoom into the loincloth area so you can see the effect this has, because it's pretty cool. And we're just going to drop on a layer mask using that selection. And at this point, it did exactly the opposite of what we wanted to do, which is not a problem. Just select your layer mask and hit Control-I and invert it. And so now you've masked out the actual line drawing right there wherever the clothing takes place. So now if we take our final line drawing and set its master opacity all the way up, we can now no longer see the line drawing wherever that clothing was. It's a really nice way to kind of add accessories on top of our drawing in a really quick and easy way, and then worry about the fact that we can see through it a little bit later. So with that, I have all of my accessories in place, my line drawing is finally done, and I think we are ready to truly begin the colorization process, which we will do in the next video.